Einar Tangen. He's a current affairs commentator who joins us now from Beijing. Let me get your thoughts. The military exercise is running from Tuesday to July 11th. What are your thoughts about this drill and the timing? It's just ahead of this arbitration ruling at The Hague.
Well, Mike, first, happy 4th of July. In terms of this particular news story, I think China is trying to show a lot of resolve ahead of the 12th, what's coming up. I mean, the main issue here for China is that UNCLOS, which is going to be issuing this ruling, is not somebody who's supposed to, it is not a body that's supposed to be solving sovereignty issues. And what I mean by that is if you have two states that are bordering on each other and they have a dispute about features between them and where their territorial waters do and what they can do, that's something UNCLOS can address. But if they are in fact talking about sovereignty and saying I own these, then UNCLOS is not supposed to be involved. Was never meant to be that. And this is the Chinese position. The international position is a little bit different. I think this is being used by U.S. and other parties to kind of muddy the waters in terms of what can UNCLOS do.
China Daily reporting that Beijing says it's ready to start negotiations with the Philippines on South China Sea related issues if Manila ignores this arbitration ruling, which is expected next week. The new leader of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, has said he wants to open direct talks with China. Do you think the ruling may actually expedite a settlement between these two countries, or at least expedite talks between the two?
Well, I don't think you can look for any settlement. At this point in time, giving up territory by any one country would be very poisonous to whoever the leaders were. But I do think there could be some sort of understanding about how to go forward on these issues. China has for quite some time been pushing the idea of bilateral negotiations between claimants and their different issues. Others have been saying that it should all be settled at once. I think this is the beginning of this. I think Duterte is a very practical man who's looking to push the Philippines ahead economically as he tries to deal with some of its internal security issues.
Let's shift from the Philippines to Japan. China strongly criticizing Japan over a scramble of military aircraft from the two countries on Monday amid a dispute over islands in the East China Sea. Two Japanese fighter jets were said to have taken provocative actions at a high speed near a pair of Chinese fighter jets that were carrying out patrols in the East China Sea. Talk to me about how you read this. You know, we keep seeing these incidents involving mostly the United States and China, but any miscalculation and there could be trouble. What are your thoughts on this latest episode?
Well, it's unusual why Japan is putting its oar into the water at this point. I mean, there have been concerns about a militarized Japan and what that would mean, exactly how far Japan is willing to go in terms of proceeding towards what it calls normalization, others call rearmament. You know, in this past week, there has been some issues with Japanese citizens being killed in other areas. I think it's really something about Shinzo Abe where he's trying to project this strongman idea, especially ahead of this 12th ruling. There's very high tensions. Both sides have to be aware that this is not leading towards something that's going to be very productive. It needs to get back to the negotiating table and coming up with solutions which are a little bit more out of the box rather than conventional, the way they're proceeding now.
Yeah, so let me ask you about this. After the 12th ruling, what do you expect to see as a reaction?
Well, it's widely anticipated that on the 12th, the ruling will be against China. China will ignore it, but it doesn't settle anything. UNCLOS has no enforcement mechanism. It's a coalition of the willing. There are real scholars in the U.S. and around the world have said, look, this is not the mechanism to be settling territorial disputes. This is about sovereignty. So in any event, it's not going to solve anything. It will likely escalate tensions, which could be de-escalated if, in fact, the Philippines and Duterte say, look, we're going to push this aside and we're going to try to reach some sort of understanding which clears the waters and allows both sides to go forward with developing these very, very valuable seas.
Einar, thanks so much for joining us from Beijing, and happy 4th to you as well.